Alhamdulillah. Alhamdulillah. Nahmaduhu wa nasta'inuhu wa nastaghfiruhu wa nu'minu bihi wa natawakkalu alayhi. Wa na'udhu billahi min shururi anfusina wa min sayyiati a'malina. Man yahdihillahu fala mudilla lahu wa man yudlilhu fala hadiya lahu. Wa nashhadu an la ilaha illallah wahdahu la sharika lahu. ونشهد أن سيدنا وسندنا وشفيعنا محمدا عبده ورسوله أما بعد فأعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم قد أفلح من زكاها وقد خاب من دساها صدق الله العظيم اللهم صل وسلم وبارك وارحم على عبدك ورسولك سيدنا محمد النبي الأمي وعلى آله وسلم تسليما. Alhamdulillah, we have not only entered the second half of the month of Ramadan, but actually we are fast approaching the end of the second Ashra of Ramadan, and very soon, in just a matter of 3 nights inshallah, we will enter the last 10 days and nights of the month of Ramadan. In some sense, the month of Ramadan itself is the greatest purifier of the heart that me and you have access to at the moment. Far more than any lesson we can give, or any class we can take, or any lecture we can give, or any book we can read. Right now, the greatest thing that can purify our heart, that which has the most power, the most potential, the most immediate direct effect on our heart, is Ramadan itself. Fasting in Ramadan, but all of the ibadat in Ramadan, all du'as we make in Ramadan, any and all istighfar, seeking Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's forgiveness in Ramadan, making tawbah to Allah ta'ala, repenting to Him in Ramadan, any and all a'mal saleh, all ilm, all ibadah, all zikr, all khidmah, all of that in this month of Ramadan is actually the best way to purify our heart. So yes, this was a topic that I have been discussing for the past several days on the weeknights, and inshallah we're probably going to end this, I think tomorrow will be the last talk of this series, inshallah. So although I have been doing these topics, the reality is that at the moment, all we have to do is strive in our ibadah, strive in our a'mal, try to make the most out of Ramadan. And what happens often is that in the middle 10 days and around the middle of Ramadan, a person goes through a kind of a little Ramadan slump, right? Things catch up with them, their family, it depends on the person's situation, their family may catch up with them, their children may catch up on them, hunger catches up with them, lack of sleep catches up on them, maybe work catches up on them, business catches up on them, and then again they have to, handle these things and renew their motivation, and the best way to do that is to look forward to the last 10 days, and nights of this month of Ramadan, because that's one of the simple, most purifying things, and inshallah maybe tomorrow I'll talk about that a bit more, exactly what we should be doing in these inshallah coming last 10 days and nights. What is often mentioned by the ulama as the root cause of all diseases of the heart is based on a hadith of Sayyidina Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa alihi wa sallam, Hubb dunya ra'su kulli khati'ah, that love for the dunya is the root cause and source of all error. So let's look at some of these words here. So there are words in Arabic for sin, right? Itham, dhanb. But the word Nabi Kareem sallallahu alayhi wa alihi wa sallam chose was khati'ah, was error. And so there's a notion here that when a person is not focused on the akhirah, when a person doesn't live life for the next life, but rather they live life for the sake of this life, they will end up in error. So a lot of the things that people talk about, and the ulama have rightly mentioned, about the illnesses of the heart, a lot of them simply have to do with this life. So if you have lust for someone, well, that is something to do with this life. You cannot say you have lust for them in the akhirah. If you have anger with someone, it has nothing to do with akhirah, because all of us know that the akhirah that all of us want is Jannah, and all of us know, inshallah, that in Jannah we're not going to be feeling feelings of anger. If a person has envy, the same thing, that it has to do with this life. If a person has, display and showing off, that also has to do with this life. If a person has lustful desires, that has to do with this life. If a person has vanity or pride, that also has to do with this life. If a person is, like what we discussed last time, is ungrateful for their blessings or heedless of the blessings of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, again, that has to do with this life. So one way we can understand, sort of in our day and age and the type of people that we are, this notion of hubb dunya being the source of error is simply that we're overly attached to the world. And sometimes for many of us that begins with ourselves. We're overly attached to ourselves. This is a major problem. We're overly attached to who I am, who I aspire to be, who I wish I was, what I can do, what effect I have, what role I play, what is my purpose. We are overly obsessed with our own self. In other words, for some of us, the most challenging thing in the dunya, the most challenging thing in this created realm of the life of this world, is our very own individual self. And so one of the ways that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has used the word nafs in Quran al-Kareem is simply this, yourself. Yes, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has used these words, lawama, mutminna, the word mutminna, and other such words for the nafs in Quran al-Kareem. And yes, there were some people from the tradition of tasawwuf who used to try to divide the nafs into 3 kinds of nafs or 3 stages of nafs. But if we overdo that, or if we exclusively look at that classification, we kind of miss the deep use of the word nafs by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in Quran al-Kareem, which is often just meant to use ourself. And a lot of us, we're too attached to ourselves. We love our own selves. And this is a problem for us. This can cause error. This can cause disease in the heart. This can cause foul action. This can cause sinful action. This can cause shameless action. This can cause disobedience to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And I would also argue that this is often the reason for disbelief in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Let's go back to the greatest disbelievers of all time, Abu Jahl and Abu Lahab. These were people who were obsessed with their own self. And because they were obsessed with their self, their status, their might, their power, their wealth, right? That's why they refused to believe in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Let's look at some of the other greatest disbelievers before the time of Nabi Kareem sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. Let's look at Fir'aun or Nimrud. These were people who were obsessed with their own self. That's it. It's not that Fir'aun had a different, if you think about it, it's not that Fir'aun had a different concept of virtue and goodness that he preferred to the concept of virtue and goodness that Musa alayhi salam was preaching, or that Fir'aun had a different concept of spirituality that he preferred and thought was better than the one that Musa alayhi salam was preaching. No, it had nothing to do with any of the topics or teachings of deen. All it had to do was with his own self. And now if you go even further back in history and you look at the greatest of the disbelievers, his name is Iblis and Shaitan. What was his ultimate problem? Right? What was that thing in the dunya that he loved? It wasn't the material things. It was his own self. In fact, Iblis, as we've said many times, he's not an atheist. He sees Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. He knows Allah ta'ala exists 100%. He's got ilmul yaqeen, ainul yaqeen, haqqul yaqeen. He has mushahada. He has every aspect of absolute certainty. But he's obsessed with his own self. That you're asking me to make sajda to you facing towards Sayyidina Adam alayhi salam, and I'm made of fire and he's made of the elements of the earth. Obsessed with his own self. So for a lot of us, and that's one of the benefits of fasting in Ramadan, because fasting humbles us by making us weak. It takes away the power, right? It takes away the strength, and it's meant to be a leveling exercise. So it levels whether you're rich or you're poor. You are fasting, whatever race or ethnicity or tribe or family or lineage or language or culture or nation or society or epoch or zamana you live in, you are fasting. It levels all of the believers onto one plain common level, which is hunger. All of you will feel hunger and all of you will feel thirst. And that makes a person realize that actually I'm not I have an exaggerated sense of self. I'm actually, at my core, I'm basically an animal. Animal in the sense that I have basic carnal desires. I need to eat and drink. And yes, there may be so many other things of my life. I think I'm educated, or I'm earning, or I do brilliant things, or I'm accomplished, or I'm talented. But there's a core basic reality to me, and that's another aspect of the word nafs, right? Which is my basic physical needs and desires, such as food and drink. So this is also meant to humble a person. To humble a person. And I think a lot of us, anyone who has difficulty fasting, whether because of heat, or they live in a place where it's a long fast, or they're tired, between Asr and Maghrib, they're humbled. They may be the most brilliant person. They cannot talk brilliantly. They cannot think brilliantly. They may be the most dynamic person, but they are sitting in a totally passive state, waiting for Maghrib to come. They can't do anything except to wait. They're like al-intizar, right? They're in waiting. So the Arabs, they have a saying, so it's not a hadith, it's just a proverb in Arabic, al-intizaru ashaddu min al-maut, right? That waiting is even more extremely burdensome on the self than death. So if we take that saying, it's just a proverb, every day in Ramadan, we're doing al-intidar. We're waiting for the fast to break. And if you accept that, and it's not guaranteed to be true because it's not a verse of Quran or Hadith, but it's a proverb, but if you accept it, that waiting is more intense than death, so this is an intense tazkiyah of the heart that takes place in the month of Ramadan. So again, Ramadan, alhamdulillah, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has put such features in Ramadan, such blessings, barakat in Ramadan. He sends so much of His mercy, His rahmah in Ramadan, that every single aspect of tazkiyah, purification of the heart, becomes easier in this month of Ramadan, is more accessible, including what we're talking about tonight, which is love for the dunya, and especially in that, number one on that list is love for our own self. Love for our own self. Let me give you another way, that we like to project ourselves, and we like to project certain narratives of ourselves, and we're very fond of this. And this is why, Sayyidina Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, he taught us that we should be very careful about who we keep as a friend. Sayyidina Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, he said, al-mar'u ala dini khalili, that a person is on the deen of their friend. And each and every one of you should then consider carefully man yukhalil, who they choose to be a mutually, and khalil is an intense word, who they choose, who they will select to be in a mutually dear, close friendship. So it's because people project. This is why, people would try to keep the company of ulama, keep the company of shuyukh, the true shuyukh, the siddiqeen, sadiqeen, salihin of the ummah, because when we sit with them and we're near them, We hope that they may project some of their humility, some of their piety, some of their love for Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, some of their taqwa, fear of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, may enter into our heart. So here, one of the first things that we love in this world that causes us to come in error is that we love our own selves. How can we purify ourselves of this? So it's very simple. It's to negate the self. To negate the self. To go to contrary to the self. To have a more balanced perspective about ourselves. To rid ourselves of every self-deception, self-delusion, delusion of grandeur. So some mashayikh, they used to say that one way to do this is to force the self to do things that are difficult. So they call this mukhalafatun nafs, to go against your nafs, to go against your very self. So that's what's happening in Ramadan, because fasting is mukhalafatun nafs. Fasting, staying away from hunger and thirst, food and drink when you're hungry and thirsty, is going against the nafs. So this is a lesson that if we feel that alhamdulillah, and I'm sure all of us should be feeling this, that alhamdulillah in the month of Ramadan we feel closer to Allah Ta'ala, we feel more taqwa, let us now accept this reality that mukhalafatun nafs works. So in Ramadan there's a fard, the mandatory type of mukhalafatun nafs that we're doing, which is the fard fast of Ramadan. But I should realize then that now, even after Ramadan, I'm going to need to do some mukhalafa, maybe a nafil fast, maybe just eating less, maybe giving something I like away in charity, maybe forgiving someone who I'm still angry with and my nafs doesn't want to forgive them, maybe going to meet someone or sit someone or greet someone or take care of someone, whereas my nafs wants to just, keep busy in my own preoccupations. But it's important to do some type of mukhalafatun nafs. Otherwise, those people who never ever do mukhalafatun nafs, who don't even have such a concept, then their self is unfettered, unrestricted, unchecked, and they end up in what we mentioned earlier, in this exaggerated sense of self. When they have an exaggerated sense of self, then they become lenient on themselves in matters of deen. You see, when you think you're a very good person, then you become soft on yourself in terms of self-discipline. You become soft on yourself in terms of deen. So you think, well, it's okay, maybe I don't pray, or it's okay, maybe I haven't paid my zakat yet, or it's okay, fine, I don't really, spend time reading Quran, or it's okay, I don't really learn or study my deen. Why? Why would a person think like this? If a person is an abd, if they view themselves as an abd, and that's the second thing we're coming to, inshallah, if they view themselves as an abd, a slave of Allah Ta'ala, they'll never think like this. But if they view themselves as something, if they have this deluded, exaggerated sense of self, and they're content with their self-contentment, they're happy with themselves, and like I said, they may even love themselves, then the illness that comes is they become very lenient. They become very lenient on themselves when it comes to deen, and then they also become lenient on themselves when it comes to their character flaws. So for example, you'll find a person who thinks that they're a good person about themselves, but sometimes they get angry at someone. They won't be self-critical. And I've been repeating this throughout. They won't be self-aware. They won't be self-critical. They won't reprimand themselves for being angry. They might not even notice one's own faults, and if they do, they ignore them. This is all because they have a sense of self. They have a sense of self. But the person who is an abd, so now let's move. How do you erase the sense of self? That is called ubudiyya. You can't erase your sense of self without the concept of ubudiyya, because otherwise, as a human being, you are talented, you are accomplished. Allah Ta'ala Himself has made human beings with tremendous potential. The only way you'll be able to erase your sense of self is when you look at yourself, consider yourself relative to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, relative to that being who's Al-Azim, Al-A'la, Al-Akbar, is majestic, tremendous, great. And then you realize relative to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, you are just an abd, you are infinitesimal nothing in this universe. You are nothing more and nothing other than the slave of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. This is how a person will negate this exaggerated sense of self. And then when you negate that sense of self, then you're no longer lenient on yourself. You're no longer content with yourself. You're always pushing yourself to improve. Always pushing oneself to improve in deen. I want more taqwa. I want more sabr. I want more ibadah. I want more akhlaq. I want to do more khidmah. I want to do more dawah. I want to do better in deen. Look, you'll see the person who negates themselves in dunya, right? So on the one hand, people will call this low self-esteem. I'm just saying, imagine somebody says that, look, I'm nothing in this world. And so what will they do? They'll work really hard. They'll be self-aware and self-critical of any flaw in themselves. They'll be watchful over any fault. They will rectify that fault. They will try to remove that fault. They will try to be dynamic and proactive. They'll be like an athlete in trying to strive. So that aspect of being dynamic and proactive, that is called mujahada. Mujahadatun nafs. That Allah Ta'ala has given me this life. Allah Ta'ala has given me this strength. Allah Ta'ala has given me ability. Allah Ta'ala has given me sense. Allah Ta'ala has given me knowledge. All of these things and so much more. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has given that to me for one reason, that I strive in His path. I strive in the path of His pleasure. I make mujahada. I use every single skill, talent, knowledge that Allah Ta'ala has blessed me with to go deep in Sirat al-Mustaqim, to practice my deen, to become stronger in deen. That I have no other mission because I'm an abd. There is no other identity I have, no other purpose that I have except to become stronger in deen and closer to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Then from there emerges then a new self, right? And that's why Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala described this in Quran al-Kareem, that self as radiyatam mardiyya. That is a person who is pleased with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and Allah ta'ala is pleased with them. Because they've eliminated and obliterated all of their own whims, fancies, desires, dreams, aspirations, hopes, and they're just simply radi with what Allah Ta'ala wishes for them. And when they learn this, that Allah Ta'ala wishes for them to be His lover, His ashik, His muhib. Allah Ta'ala wishes for them that they should become His mahbub. Allah Ta'ala wishes for them that they should become His muqarrab. Allah Ta'ala wishes for them that they should be from the ummah of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Allah Ta'ala's wish for them is that they should go to Jannah. Allah Ta'ala's wish for them that it should be in Jannah for those in the company and nearness of Sayyidina Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. So when a human being, when they truly understand deen and they understand Quran al-Kareem, they understand what Allah Ta'ala wishes for me. And they're so happy with that. They're so pleased with that. Radiyatam mardiyya. They become absolutely radi with what Allah Ta'ala wishes for them, and they dynamically, actively pursue it. They strive for it. They do mujahadatun nafs, and they will counter anything that takes them away from their mission. They do mukhalifatun nafs. That is the person who gets this quote-unquote nafs mutmainna, such that they are pleased with Allah Ta'ala, and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is pleased with them. And if, on the other hand, we are stuck with concepts, right, of me, myself, and I, then Allahu Akbar Kabira. Very difficult then to purify the heart. Then all that standard laundry list table of contents of ailments of the heart and diseases of the heart, they will all surreptitiously creep up onto someone. They will all surreptitiously manifest and arise from the heart of that person, such that even that person, although outwardly they may be a Muslim, they may be on Sunnah, they may outwardly be praying and fasting, but in their heart has arisen not just one but many of these illnesses. So at the same time they feel lust, and they also have stinginess, but they also have greed, and they also have some arrogance, and they also have some envy and jealousy for others, and they also have some malice and spite and rancor and ill will towards others, and they also do things to show off for ostentation, and they're also ungrateful for the blessings of Allah Ta'ala. And another thing we discussed in the series, and also they're very, distant from death. They don't like the mention of dying, tadhkiratul maut and dhikrul maut. So they have all of these things in. Allahu Akbar. They end up with all of these things in them because they didn't go against their nafs. So this is a major aspect of love for the dunya, is this dangerous aspect of being in love with one's own self. The second way hubb dunya is meant in this hadith, hubb dunya ra'su kulli khati'ah, is love for the world itself, right? Not yourself, but the world. Material things in the world, the material world, material possessions in the world, material luxury in the world. And that also has been the source of much error. So again, Ramadan helps us in that, because by being hungry and thirsty, you are being reduced to a state of absolute material want, of material lack, right? Because we don't have food and drink. It's as if we may have, our fridge may be stocked, but we're experiencing hunger and thirst as if we have no food to eat and nothing to drink. And so this is Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala making us experience 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19 hours a day, however long your fast is, in a state of material want, in an absence of material possession. And then we should again reflect that if this is what's helping our heart, if Allah Ta'ala is saying لَعَلَّكُمْ تَتَّقُونَ, so then after the month of Ramadan, fine, not through fard fasting, but after the month of Ramadan, there has to be some way that I can combat this inclination and ultimately dangerously love for the material world and this fleeting, ephemeral, temporary abode called al-hayat dunya, and also against the love of my nafs, or the love of myself, or the sense of myself. So we make dua that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala enable us to maximize these remaining days and nights of the month of Ramadan, and then may Allah ta'ala grant us hidayah from Him to learn lessons from this month that we can continue to live and practice afterwards, and may He accept our entire life as a journey in which we keep trying, keep struggling to purify our heart only and only in His name, and only for His sake. And may He accept that striving and struggling, and may He, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala Himself, purify our heart in this world, and may He purify our heart on the Day of Judgment, and may He admit us entry into that place of the pure known as Jannah al-Firdaus, a place where He'll keep our hearts, inshallah, in a state of absolute contentment, in a state where we will be radiyatan mardiyah, we will be pleased with Him, and He will be pleased with us. Wa akhiru da'wana and alhamdulillahi rabbil alameen.